Hello and good morning. My name is Cindy Vandenbosch and I am from Turnstile Tours. Thank you so much for joining us for the program today, where we'll be talking with Charlotta Janssen about her artwork and also her work as a restaurateur. We, especially in this moment where we are, many of us are thinking about the past and wanting to learn more about our connection to the history of this country and especially the civil rights movement. We thought in this moment that it would be important to bring on someone who has been thinking about this for the last 10 years in her artwork. So we'll be talking to Charlotta Janssen today. After the 2008 election, she began a series of works that were inspired by mugshots of the freedom riders and other civil rights activists and stories of civil disobedience. She talked to a lot of these people and will be sharing some of those stories with us today. In terms of her own story, she's lived all over the world. She was born in Maine to German parents. They ended up living in Iran and she grew up in part of her childhood in Iran, then went to art school in Germany and eventually ended up traveling the world and ending up in New York City as an artist, a street performer in 1995, and for over 20 years, she has had a French bistro in Bed-Stuy called Chez Oskar, and at the same time, she's continued to be an artist and pursue work that especially looks at stories of civil disobedience. So we're really grateful that she will be with us today, but before we welcome her to the program, I just wanted to provide an introduction for those of you who may not be familiar with Turnstile Tours. We are a social enterprise tour company that partners up with different nonprofit organizations in order to elevate stories that are underrepresented in the public record and to document stories that connect to meaning and place and share those with people through live tour experiences. And so we're always kind of learning from one another, learning from the partners that we work with, people like Charlotta Janssen, whom we'll be talking to today, as well as our visitors, and in this case through our virtual programs, all of you out there who are watching today. We, of course, because of the pandemic, are not able to be out in the world in the places where we usually share these stories, and so we are now on what is our almost 100th, we're getting close to our 100th virtual program. We've been running them daily. And in fact, on some days like today, we will have 2 different programs. And this is our way of continuing to share stories, to connect people to one another, and connect people to the places and people that we care about so much that make New York City such a unique place to live and work. About our upcoming programs really quick, this afternoon, Gina Gao, our staff member who has been with us for a couple of years, she's originally from Wuhan. She emigrated to the United States several years back, but she will be sharing a different side of Wuhan. We've seen Wuhan in the news about COVID-19, but it's the 4th largest city in China, and it's the city of 100 breakfasts, and she's going to be reflecting on her childhood memories of growing up in Wuhan. Tomorrow, we'll be joined by Gabriel Willow at 11 a.m. to learn about urban hawks. He's a naturalist and will be doing a bird watching kind of program with us. And then on Tuesday, we will be learning about the work of Rocking the Boat, which is an organization that's based on the Bronx River, and the work that they do with youth. So we're and leadership and the community. And so we're really kind of excited about that program. A few housekeeping things that I would like to share with all of you. So if you would like to use the closed captions, we have our staff member, Brian Hoffman, who is behind the scenes doing live captioning. So in order to access the live captions, just click the CC on the bottom of your screen and the captions will pull up. We also want to make this interactive. We want to encourage you to ask questions or share your impressions. And so if you're watching via Zoom, you can click on chat and type in your questions. If you'd like to share them with everyone, please select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see what you're sharing. And then my colleague, Doug Chapman, who is behind the scenes producing today, he'll make sure that those questions, that I know about those questions and can ask Charlotta as we go along. We want to make it interactive and make it a dialogue as much as possible, just as we do on our in-person guided tours. So without further ado, I would love to invite Charlotta Janssen to the program. Thank you so much, Charlotta, for joining us today. And I'm just gonna ask you to start your video. There we go. And unmute. Whoop. So I need you to unmute. There we go.
There I am. You can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today, Charlotta. We're really grateful to have you share your work and your insights. I know this is especially a stressful time for you due to the pandemic and the fact that you're in the restaurant industry, which is not an easy thing right now.
No, it's really, really hard. I don't think I've been through anything as hard as this, and I've been through hard stuff, but this is really hard. But you do realize you're part of a community, and that the one thing is you can't just say me, it's us, and that's actually pretty powerful when you realize that. And recently we had to, go to city council and talk about what we need. And I realized we were much more powerful when we spoke we and not I. And when we rounded together, almost 30 restaurants that all have the same issue, it seems like an unsurmountable cliff of problems. And but when we say we, it's a lot easier.
And could you share, I know the hearing was on Thursday, and in fact, one of our staff members also testified as part of that hearing. Well, he submitted a written testimony, sort of, because we also work with street vendors, and a lot of our street vendors are concerned about the open streets plan. What was it that you and other restaurateurs were asking for when it comes to opening up the streets for restaurants in the city?
Well, it's outdoor seating as possible so that we can survive. Our business is down by 80%, and pretty much all these programs that they put into to help, and like to say, like, we did this for small business, didn't help us. And especially what's most insulting is the third-party delivery apps, that we're not capped enough, and we're not made retroactively, and we're slow walked to the finish line. And that really got us mobilized, because no one should pat them on the shoulder for that. We should all, boycott Seamless and Grubhub, because they are incredibly abusive. They should have voluntarily gone down on their percentage. They are a monopoly right now. They are the only ones where everyone orders from, and they own our data, and they're abusing their monopoly. So the system allows them to abuse. And when it's upsetting when the mayor speaks about people who are bad actors, who are restaurateurs. There's just people who are more and less and more desperate and take action. But the real bad players are the third-party delivery apps and predatory landlords who don't have any understanding for their restaurant tenants whose businesses are down by 80%. And these loan processes that cut out small businesses just because they feel that they're maybe too high risk or something, but none of them did anything to deserve this. So we all have to speak up, and you have to speak up for each other.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about the character of New York City and what makes this such a special place to live, it's the neighborhood mom and pop restaurants and shops that are the heart of the city.
Disappearing to a certain degree, and that needs to be. We need to bring them back. If we really want them back, let's bring them back. They have the power to do it.
And maybe in some ways this will bring to light those practices that these delivery services have used through the years that have extracted so much from the small businesses in our city. So a way that people can act right away is that they can order directly from the restaurant that they want food from, rather than going through one of these delivery apps.
Yeah, and also I think also good leadership from council would be to not make it something like the restaurants or the food vendors, but that they really can set a good set of rules so that both can, you know, survive. That's what their job is. And I think that's what they understood. I think they got it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
we're going to talk a little bit more about your restaurant, but if you'd like to introduce us at this time to your restaurant and where it is and how you got into the restaurant industry when you moved to New York City, that would be great.
Well, I own Chez Oskar since 21 years. And in order to pay for my art shows, you have to do applied art. It's not less art, it's just applied. There's art and applied art, and both of them work for you, you know? Making your art, then you don't have to question this. Who is this? Where's this going to hang? What's this going to do? It has to be done. And when you're doing applied art, it's not like, is this going to stand in history, or is this really truly this? No, it's applied art. It has to be done that way. You know, it's paid for or not paid for, but it's applied art. Anyway, so I did restaurant decor for restaurateurs. I started with murals and murals wall treatments, murals wall treatments and floor plans, murals wall treatments, floor plans, and permits. And nothing I learned in a school, but you know, you learn as you go on, and you learn to apply yourself if you have to. And then I, by mistake, had a con man for a boyfriend, and I helped him open a place, but I was left holding the bag, so to speak, and it was going down fast. And just by sheer luck and the great chef who I was working with then, who I'm still working with now, Octavio Simancas, and later on a great manager who joined us in 2002, have we been able to stay afloat and alive now. And I've been working with the chef since 1999 and the manager since 2002, and they're my family. Yeah.
I know that your works of art are present throughout the inside of the restaurant when people visit. And we're going to share some photos of that a little bit later on, so that your sort of career as a restaurateur and as an artist are pretty intertwined, it sounds like. But could you take us back? You have such an interesting upbringing and childhood. Could you share a little bit about growing up in Iran and then ending up in Germany, and how you came here to New York in the 90s?
Okay, well, Iran was fantastic, and my parents are really open-minded liberals, and that's like the other ace in the hole. So my mom said, you're not in a country if you don't speak the language. So my mom made us all learn Farsi, and we went to Persian summer camp, just like American summer camp. We just all spoke Farsi, and learned about Persian culture. And when the revolution hit, we were very empathetic. You know, change had to come and the lies have to stop. We can't live lies. You know, you can't hold up a government of lies and oppression. Over time, that doesn't work. But, you know, it went from demonstrations to, you know, first, you know, we had a tank in front of our house, curfew, demonstrations on the rooftops, and it slowly escalated. It was a very slow motion kind of feeling of 9/11. And it's just every day, but I made it through today. It was really bad, so maybe tomorrow will be better. But the next day got worse, and the next day got worse, and the next day got worse, and then the bank closed, and everything we had was in. So, well, we were all in that together. So everyone had everything taken away. So there was bartering going on, but my grandma said, "This is it, we're done," and she got us out. And we took one of the last regular flights out in '79, and that's how I landed in Germany. It's a, you know, better social system than the States, and I got an education, and I dropped out of this education. I moved to Berlin. I was a bit of a rebel, and I was on every anti-America demonstration I could find. But my mom said, "Just go over and look at it. It's a great place. Have a look at it." So I did. And I must agree, and I was just coming here for a visit, but that was 1989.
Oh, no kidding. And so did you land, I mean, I know you were born in Maine, but did you land, when you came back, did you end up in New York City? And is this kind of where you've remained throughout?
I landed in New York City. I have since tried a few times to go to Maine, and you think, oh, there's going to be that connection. I feel that in the city, you know, I'm not a country girl. Yeah.
Do you ever have the chance to use your Farsi? Have those language skills stuck with you?
Oh, yes, yes. But, you know, every time I also am facing how rusty I've gotten, you know, but I love Farsi. Farsi is a beautiful language, and I really should, you know, head over and practice, or spend some time there and practice.
Yeah,
بله،
absolutely.
بچه بودم خیلی خوش گذشتم اونجا. Yeah.
So we're here primarily today to learn about your artwork that's inspired by stories of individual people and their acts of civil disobedience back during the civil rights movement. But now we'll also be talking about some of your more recent works as well. And I'm hoping that we can kind of pull up and look at some of your artwork together. You know, the connection that you and I have is that we initially met when Turnstile Tours put together an educational program for Pratt Institute and for their program for high school students. And so a couple of summers ago, we brought students to your space, and I know for them and also for our staff, the experience of seeing these works of art and hearing about your process and also the research that you did, including speaking with freedom riders, was very impactful. And so you know, I'm grateful for you taking the time amidst this very kind of, on one hand, as a restaurateur, it's a stressful situation, but I also know that you have been and are an ally and supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement, and that there are insights that you have to share from really thinking about these individual people and what we can learn about their actions from the past and think about our society today. And so if possible, Doug, could you please pull up the slideshow, and we're going to have Charlotta kind of walk us through. Oh, so this is the one of the groups of high school students that we brought to your studio.
I have a messy studio. I have a messy process, and I paint what I fall in love with. And I don't think we have control over a narrative. I don't think we tell a good story when we're in control of anything. We can only take charge of, you know, what we see and try to make it understood to our audience. So I'm not here to own anything or to be the explainer of anything, but just to paint what I see and share it, you know. And I think in that we can all be allies. So I fell in love with the civil rights movement when Obama was elected, and I just thought this felt impossible, but this happened in its place. So I wanted to look in the past and thank those who had gotten us here. Now, you know, now we're here. This is a whole different here, and putting them up was really hard. Putting up a new show on Freedom Riders recently was very hard because I felt like we have done 200 steps backwards, but these recent demonstrations say to me, no, we are actually progressing. And I'm really grateful for the demonstrations happening. As much as the bottom is falling out of everything and the pandemic is really killing us, there's so much good that's coming out of this. And do you want to know more about my process, or hello? Can you hear me, or I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry about that. Yeah, why don't we take a look at some of your work and
yeah,
you know, whatever kind of speaks to you, because this is about you
okay,
sharing your process and your work.
Yeah. Well, when I started doing the Freedom Riders series, when it just took place, it's not like you choose it, it chooses you. Good stuff just chooses you. And as much as people say, you know what, you don't look the part, like I can't help that. That's not my packaging. I'm not in control of it. I love the story, and I really wanted the narrative to be about the community that came together, and that we see these masses of portraits. When I came across these mugshots of civil rights activists, the truth that came from them was like a laser beam from that moment. And to make masses of portraits of all of these people made you be able to have a portrait of a moment. And each one of them is an individual. So each one of them is speaking, but together they are a voice. And I liked juxtaposing the freedom rides to the bus boycotts because they were 5 years apart, and there was so much that took place in that time. And you can feel, even can feel the system pushing back on them, because it started off that I did Montgomery bus boycotters and Montgomery freedom riders and could juxtapose them perfectly. So they were basically in the same place, getting photographed and arrested in the same place. But they, as opposed to 4 digits, the freedom riders had 5 digits. And they had 2 lights hitting them, and they were standing up, and their body height was recorded, and the place and the date they were arrested. There was so much more information. So you saw the information coming on, as opposed to just 4 digits and just a portrait. And then what I find visceral here, for instance, with Rosa Parks, she was an activist. She was also a tailor, and the way she's holding her these digits, 4 digits up. I was a tailor too at some point. That's one of my jobs I had. And she's holding it like she's going to undo the stitching or she's going to redo the stitching. And so I loved the mugshots of the bus boycotters that you often had their hands in, and there was maybe a black man who had a white knuckled anger. And in the evolution of the freedom rides to the bus boycotts, you saw that it crossed the color line. There were black and white people being arrested, as opposed to the bus boycotts where it was only black people and it was only local. And so this is a furtherance, and that there's such a beautiful direct connect. And I'm so sad for a lot of really great freedom riders that we've lost, that they can't see this. At first I thought, well, at least they won't see Trump. But I wish they would see this movement. I think they would be so excited. Yeah. And here, particular in this portrait further, then we can move on, is Rosa Parks's fingerprint chart. And I just completely enlarged it. Like her thumb is probably like a foot wide. And so this way, she's left her mark on us. And I think that's something so visceral that you can feel in the fingerprint chart. That's Rosa Parks' thumbprint. That's her fingerprint. That's her ring finger. And behind her is her community of fellow arrestees who supported each other. And that's why I wanted to bring it in. So I like doing...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what prompted you, or what gave you the idea to start kind of using mugshots from this era to create works of art? What was the aha moment for you?
It was the election of Obama. I had not done this before, and it just came through me, and it was not even a thought process. It was just like my hands started moving, like I had canvas, my hands started moving. It's kind of weird that way. I just was so fascinated by these portraits, and it kind of came from what we had spoken in the past about is, I love doing portraiture, and these mugshots were just such a great portrayal of the civil rights movement, of that moment of being confronted by the system and of confronting the system. There's this reciprocity. You're telling the system you're wrong, and the system is saying, no, you're wrong. So it was this reciprocity that was so powerful, and this perfect moment that could describe the whole movement of confrontation and being confronted and being singled out too. That was what a large part of the civil rights movement too was, that they got singled out, and they took advantage of that later on by being very well dressed. And that's another thing I thought was really fascinating, is what do you wear when you go to war? And these people are wearing these beautiful outfits, are dressed their best, and they're actually going and engaging in war. And as much as they're smiling in this picture or they're angry, you don't see how they are. They a lot of them went through a training, so they are armed, with peaceful intentions and with nonviolent intentions and nonviolent direct action.
And here we see Rosa Parks, but you also, if we can advance to the next slide, and you could tell us about some of the other kind of people whose stories you painted. Here we're seeing an art show that you did back in 2016. Could you tell us about this show?
Yeah, this was at Richard Beaver Gallery. And Richard Beaver is an amazing gallerist who's very, very, very nurturing. And yeah, I wanted to do different size portraits and make it a human weave. And as you can see here, these are freedom riders. So it's white and black people. It's profile and front. So the profile is something where you can look onto someone, and a front is someone looking right into you or through you or confronting you. So I wanted it to be a weave of people coming from all over, people that I met, where the story becomes personal. I've met most of these freedom riders, and a lot of freedom riders also saying, if you're going to portray this moment correctly, you have to bring in the teenagers of Jackson, Mississippi. For the longest time, they were not recognized. They were not acknowledged as freedom riders. And over time, it becomes clear. Every movement, every time has its music and its noise, and so you have to kind of. The noise comes on, the music comes on its own, and the noise dies away. The noise is everything but the truth, and the music is the truth. But I also wanted to bring back the noise, and that's where the collage comes in. And so this is a weave of people from all over getting together to change the course of action. And they were successful. Yeah, here's Bill Harbor and my neighbor. There's two women in this picture, like the bottom left and in the middle, almost on the top. They were actually my neighbors. I was on a few demonstrations with the woman on the top until I found out that she was a freedom rider. And then I realized, okay, I've got to incorporate you. And I met, one of them is the wife of Wyatt T. Walker. She's to the right of her. And she actually shared a floor plan of the prison she was in, and that's actually collaged into her. And also, the food they ate and the songs they sang and the thoughts they had, and that's actually collaged into her hair. And so I realized this has really become a form of augmented portraiture, that I guess I can call it. Maybe not a sexy name, but it feels like that's what it is. It's augmented portraiture. And I realize it takes a long time to make it through a show like this.
And for people who, and just zooming out in terms of just the freedom riders and what they were doing in the time, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, as a whole, I mean, I think, a movement is about rolling the punches. We see that now. They intended to go from Washington all the way down and to New Orleans, and that was the plan. And they kind of got stuck in Jackson, Mississippi. And that was a good and a bad thing. I mean, it's a violent, violent place, but they had what the freedom riders teach you also is about, you get them, you can't change their minds, but you have to eradicate the racism or break through the racism where their pockets were, with their pocketbooks. And basically, Jackson, Mississippi, staying in prison and jail no bail, and making them pay for you to stay there, pay for you to have an attorney. It was burdening the system so much. They didn't have that budget to accommodate hundreds and hundreds of freedom riders, and that's what really broke it. And so it's a blessing and a curse that Jackson, Mississippi became ground zero, but it was really targeted, and the prison was overrun. They had to put them in death row, which is kind of symbolic. And it was quite an honor to be at one of those reunions and to actually come and join them at Parchment Prison, where they actually stayed in death row and didn't know, they had notions of where they were and how these layouts were. And to actually visit them again with them was quite an experience.
And it's so interesting because you have really dug into these individual stories, which makes it, I think, the number of stories that you've investigated make this such a meaningful and deep kind of connection that you seem to have to this movement.
Yeah, it feels like it's never enough. You can never do enough. And I know, I mean, from Stanley Nelson to Rob Arsenal, they all say, getting involved in the freedom rides story, you just your whole family becomes widowers. You're just totally engulfed in it because there's just so much to learn about them. That each of them is such an individual. And we're lucky that we're so young that we have a lot of them around. But we're losing a lot too.
Yeah. And Doug, if you could please advance to there we go. And if there are any kind of stories that are sparked by the images that we're seeing, I know that I believe
these were the teenagers and the man to the right next to the Guy Nail Hayes, the large portrait. It's a portrait and a profile. He was sitting next to me at a Freedom Rider screening, and we were sobbing and watching this, and it was so moving. And he would just try to console me, and I'm just going like, why? What an honor to be next to this teenager and put his body in the movement, and here he is trying to console me. I'm not worthy of this. And that's Charles Cox. And what I kind of felt about, like, this is a 6x4 foot portrait, and I really like getting into three-dimensionality, and basically I cut away a lot of, I just want to have a few tones that I can work with to really sculpt on a flat surface. And the background here is also, the idea is to, stars and prison stripes is kind of the pattern, and it's a bit like, what do you say, the type of cloth where they stitch, sorry, my vocab, like a patchwork quilt. We are all patchwork quilts, and that's a very American thing, and I wanted it to look a bit like a patchwork quilt where you'd call the pattern maybe stars and prison stripes.
And we can see in the background here that you're using what appear to be newspaper articles of the time.
Yeah.
And so this kind of gets in a little bit to your process as an artist, and how you're taking these mugshots and transforming them and sort of humanizing these people's stories.
And sometimes it's good to have like be limited in what you can do. For instance, I just had a little printer that I started working with at the time, and to have to like patch around, and sometimes the colors weren't true. I realized that actually contributed to the style of the way these things look, that it was not always like that perfect color, because I think a lot of people try so hard to perfect, and that often kills work. I always see people trying to get that perfect color, that purpose, and I'm a fan of imperfection, actually, and messiness. I'm a great promoter of messiness. Yeah, as you can see when you see pictures of my studio, but it's nice to see them all clean in a gallery, though, too. It's a nice process.
And I was watching a video that Brick put together about this exhibit. And Richard Beavers, the owner and the curator of the gallery, was talking about how he hung the paintings closer together than he normally would for a typical show. And I don't know if there's something he sort of spoke about the fact that it was about people kind of coming together and supporting one another.
I think that's really important, to hang them close together, because they are a community. They're not, they're each confronted on their own, but they came together because they wanted to partake and support each other. So they should be close together.
Okay. And I know coming up here, we're going to have some photos that, so you also, in addition to this exhibition, as well as other exhibitions, were the illustrator for this children's book. Could you say a little bit about the story? I think this is a timely kind of story for families maybe to look back on with their children as they think about their own role in the present movement.
Yeah, well, I think it's always timely. The civil rights movement is the noble men and noble people of this, noble men and noble women of this time, or of our time. And I was really honored that Joanne Trumpower Mulholland herself had insisted that I be her illustrator. I had met her and her son, and I had painted her for the show, and she really wanted me to be her illustrator, and that really honored me, because I was at the time really stressed, and I don't think I really wanted to take on a project. But when she insisted, then I said, okay, I have to do this, and I'm really proud that I did, because I think it's a really great story of telling the story of a movement, of you know, petite white woman from the South who chose to participate, who was, you know, the first white student in Tuvalu College, and just took part in every part of this movement and dedicated her life to it. And that is pretty unusual. It's not someone who just dipped in and dipped out, but just, you know, spent her whole life in this movement, and is to this day a champion. Yeah.
On these next slides, this is sort of taking folks into your gallery space at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And so whatever you'd like to share as we walk along here, and we're also going to have some photos where we can really see process.
Okay, so my process, I like to cut it down to black, white, blue, and what I call aqua, teal. A lot of people say green, but I'm slightly blue-green blind. And I like these color flashes inside. And I didn't realize what it was until very recently that made me cut this down. I am extremely nearsighted, and I have all kinds of eye issues. One of them was that I used to be wall-eyed, and I could not see three-dimensionally. My eyes would go apart all the time, and I really could not coordinate. And when I was about 4, I was lucky that they recognized it, and they, you know, made me learn in a school. I didn't have surgery, but I earned my three-dimensional vision myself with the help of a doctor, and a nurse. But I had to physically do the homework. And part of it was to look through 3D glasses and to bring a green and a red, or a blue and a red glasses, or, you know, like those paper glasses that you look for at 3D cinemas, right? And so I had to always look through them and bring the picture together, bring it together, and I'd see this red flash, I'd see this blue flash, and then I'd see this soup that would turn three-dimensional. And it was, I only realized recently, you know, I'm now over 50, and I realized that I'm reenacting my 4-year-old, 5-year-old moment when I was able to see three-dimensionally, because to me, three-dimensionality is so important. I really want you to believe that that this is not a flat canvas, that there's something three-dimensional coming out, you know. So I really love the contrast. My main criteria is, you know, so field, shadow, and light, to really work with them and fight. So to me, if a child is that, you know, there's a lot of promise in their fight. If it's an old person, it's, you know, a story that's already taken place and that is just being retold. And you know, you tell it with your feet, with your legs, with your chin, with your hairline, with your, every part of you tells it. So if, you know, if I'm starting a portrait and I'm painting your feet, I'm starting with your feet and then taking it all the way to your head, then, you know, your portrait starts with your feet. And it's not just about getting your eye in a perfect place or your nose. You know, it's really getting that feeling of how your fight with gravity taking place now, with shadow and light and depth of field accompanying it. And this is a particular piece I really love. I'm in love with James Van der Zee's society photography. I think it's fantastic, recognized, and it's also about how do you you know, work this. For instance, this is the Harlem Swim Team, and I love this photograph he took, because it's a pretty hostile environment for these kids. You can tell they're maybe a little bit cold. Maybe this place was not heated. I don't think that they had a heated pool maybe then. And their bodies are maybe wet and they're shiny, and this harsh light is falling on them. And it's creating these amazing shapes on their foreheads, on their noses, on their cheeks, and on their long, thin limbs. And it's creating a pattern too. And I was fascinated by this photograph, even when it was in like low resolution when I found it. And I've repainted it a few times because I just revisit and re-enjoy that moment when I discovered this. And I would say from my training, having learned to paint in Germany, up the North Sea coast in a little harbor town, I mainly learned how shadow falls onto fair skin. And what I'm fascinated by, and I can't help but keep on painting, and I don't see it portrayed enough, is how light just bounces off, you know, a dark surface, dark skin. And it's something that's fascinated me since, you know, especially since discovering the photography of James Van der Zee. And you know, also this battle where we're always asked, oh, are you abstract or are you concrete? Well, I think we're a little bit of both. We paint because we move a little bit away from the true photography, otherwise we'd be taking pictures. And but we also want it to represent something, so we're not totally abstract. I guess you wouldn't say this is abstract, but for instance, with the collage, I can put really brash shapes in, and because I don't necessarily interrupt the photography, you see, I brought in some of the photography in those color flashes, and I just collaged them in with cheap prints. Sometimes you can jewel things with something cheap. And
So is that
yeah.
what we're is that what we're seeing, Charlotta, in the squares or the rectangles where?
Yeah, that's collage. So a part of the photograph is brought back, and that's kind of a bit irritating, maybe and maybe also soothing for the observer, because maybe you have a confirmation of where this picture came from, but also a flash back and forth from the mediums. So you don't really expect to see a photo in the middle of a painting, and you might think, oh, that's a real letdown, or you're diminishing your work, or you're gluing over things that you labored over to find the right line, to find the right representation. But you have to let that go, because you want to progress. You can't just get stuck on your lines. That's vanity,
Yeah,
You
yeah.
try to if you can, you have to try to steer away from that. Yeah.
And here we see some of the collage, kind of some of the
Yeah.
I don't know
And
whether those are photographs or.
Yeah. Well, that's also, sometimes there's prints that I'm working over. I kind of go back and forth between collaging and painting, so that you get sometimes a little too stuck and get a little too serious about a line or a surface, and this is rotating. So I'm always working on several pieces at the same time, so that I disengage and re-engage.
And let's take a look at these next, here we have a David Bowie project. Can you share the backstory on this?
Yeah, it was a commission, and I was a little bit, I wanted to do a great job, and it stressed me out to, stick collage onto this painting and have the client go, no, that's not what I wanted. So I actually made a couple of prints and said, okay, is this direction or that direction? How do we want to go get there? And it was great. It was really fun because you were creating artwork on the way, and you could have a dialogue without, destroying the original or making it less, but getting to the other side together.
Right. So this is really sort of a collaborative effort. I mean, it even sounds like many of the works that you create are collaborative. You're collaging, but you're also engaging with the actual people in some cases as you're making the work.
That's my job. I'm a collaborator. I love to collaborate. Yeah.
And so this is again in your studio. And if we can go, and so these are paintings. If you could share a little bit.
Yeah, and Bill Harbour, who I met, and I met his family, and they were just the most gracious people. And inside the collage is actually a letter from his mother to him in Parchment Prison, telling him, son, about coming home, don't come home. The white folks are asking where you park your bus, and telling us that we are supposed to have paid up your life insurance. And these things really strike you. Just imagine a mother having to hear that, and it hit everyone. And I mean, to share something as intimate as that, and having the graciousness to share it with me, a white lady, was really, really, and that I would do the right thing with it, because that's another issue too. It really, that struck me as, now I have a responsibility too.
And he was a bus driver, is that right?
He was also a student, he was also studying, but he had to make ends meet. So he was driving a school bus and with kids. So he, that's why they asked about him, where he parked the bus. It was just a way of threatening, intimidate him. Yeah. And his mother did everything to try for him not to come home. And it took him 2 years. Oh yeah, this is Joy, right? And yeah, and that's Rosa again. Here I did 2 portraits of her, and this one I was the first one where I was still, getting to know her face. The second one is an older portrait. This one is or a younger portrait. This is an older one of the same mugshot. I don't mind doing a repeat as long as it's different. You know, it's not a repeat, it's just a revisit. And here, Rosa Parks, if I thought, if this was Spain and she was in a movement, then she would be La Madonna Rosa. And so that's why I felt her story could be raised, you know, emanating from her, because she definitely is a Madonna of the civil rights movement. And inside her, oh yeah, and here is a left. Oh, inside there's just a bus, and this is to the left was also one of my first collage issues where I would actually got into retro collage, and retro collage is goes a little further, taking the photograph and putting it back in to give maybe the portrait roots, and that was the first time I collaged into the photograph back in. And so left to the left is Adam and Eve, 1942 in I forgot the name of the town. It's in the South. I think Greenville. I don't know it right now. You paint so much you forget the titles. But this is it's a couple I took from that was actually at a funeral, and I found that they were so somber and their burden was so great that it needed to be portrayed. And they are, there's the classic apple tree, so it's very clear that they're Adam and Eve. And the mugshots around them are of the civil rights movement. Like how can they define their lives against all of this? And to the right are these athletes, and I love the old depictions of athletes, and I think there's this sportsmanship, and also there's a love between these men or these women that are all in a group, and for anyone to say that that's unnatural, I see teams getting together all the time. It's not necessarily that they're erotic, but there's a love between men and men and women. And I always found that to be so strong in these depictions of teams and sports groups, and that's what I love about them.
I know also where you are right now, you have paintings that you've been working on that are also connected to sports. Could you share those works with us?
Yeah, it's really in its beginning. Do you see them, or?
Doug, would you be able to pull the screen down, stop screen share, so we can see her studio in full view?
Yeah, well, right now, this is, so here is Fritz Pollard. I think you see Fritz.
Oh, there we go.
Fritz Pollard, an amazing, amazing man. And he was the first African-American coach of the NFL in 1920. And he was one of a handful or two handfuls of Black players. And by 1926, they got kicked out of the NFL, and it's kind of upsetting to read in Wikipedia that they were let go. They weren't let go; they were segregated out. And next to him is actually Paul Robeson. You see him too?
Is Paul on the left?
Paul is the tall guy.
Oh, on the right. Okay, got it.
And Fritz was pretty short. He was known also as the human torpedo, and had to have bodyguards take him from and to the games because they were worried about him getting lynched. And these are very ugly stories and beautiful stories because he overcame that also. You can't censor stories, you just have to tell them. And this one is I was fascinated by this young girl, and it's part of a bigger piece. I can maybe pull it up, but I don't know how to turn this around. I'm just not. So underneath is her whole family. Maybe we can show it later, but her whole family, they're all about to lose the farm. And each of them is going through a different stage of grief, but she's the one who's really taking you on, accusing you of like, we're losing this, and I was always fascinated, and only recently did I find out her name is Charlotte.
No kidding.
My big sister confronting you. Yeah.
You must, in your paintings, it's almost as if we're making eye contact with the people you're painting, and so you've been making eye contact with her in a way through this work of art, and then discovering you have that shared connection.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Well, I mean, and maybe we're also all losing the farm. Maybe there's that connection too. You know, I mean, it really, I was actually, when I was painting this, and I'm revisiting it now, it was actually the hearings, the Senate hearings. And it just was so heartbreaking to see how many lies were being promoted as truth and how much truth was being suppressed. And that will correct, you know, we have to correct those things. They can't stay where they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's also another one of our girl, reality winner. I'll just put her in front here. There's reality.
Oh no. Oh.
That's why paintings have to leave my studio so that they don't. So here's reality winner. She's right now doing time. You see her?
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm.
So reality is, her name is Reality Winner. And I love that story, and I just heard of her story. She's this tiny pixie, and also listening to her getting interviewed and cornered is very painful. She's, you know, just a free thinking person, and she really was upset about, you know, the downturn and the control and the fascism coming in this administration. And she sent her crime is that she sent a document on, I don't know exactly what this document pertained, but it was a document from the a highly classified document of how infiltrated, or how much the Russians had infiltrated our country, I believe, or our voting system. And she was so upset about it that she faxed something to the Intercept, and sending her fax got her 3 years in jail. And our politicians commit incredible crimes every day, and they're running free. Yeah.
So as you think about sort of the present moment, and you know, what has your sort of investment in these stories, like how are you sort of reflecting on where we are today and this movement in general?
Well, let's fast forward 20 years from now, and somebody says to you, "What did you do in this time?" And you go like, "Oh, I sat at home and I just waited for it to pass." You're like, "Really? That's what you did?" So I think we all have to engage, and we all have to be allies, and we have to realize that this is a moment in history that we better participate in. And it's not about going, you know, I think a lot of people are maybe a little bit embarrassed. They haven't dealt with, they haven't thought about it. Like, you know, we all don't deal with things we don't have to deal with, but now we have to, and that's a really good thing. And if you're uncomfortable, good, you know, let that discomfort in, and take action and do something, you know, be an ally, you know, partake in a demonstration. Don't aggress, throw yourself in the movement. Be, you know, if there's someone getting hurt, you know, try to help them up, you know, try to, whatever you can give, you know, you give that, you know, and if you have privilege, use it, you know, don't go like, "Oh, I have privilege." No, use it, take it, use it. That's it. Very simple instructions. Yeah, and they're not coming from me. They're things I've heard and I apply. So I can't take authorship. I'm not a writer, I'm just a painter. Yeah.
And simple, but very wise. And I think that's the key right now, is to sort of think about your sort of position in the world and consider what you can do from that place, you know.
Or also say, this is not, let's start about this. This is not about me, you know. Let's say, this is not about me. Participate in that way and give it, you know. I think that's really important. Because I mean, I kind of cringe when you say like, "Oh, that I studied this or I studied that." Like, no, it took a hold of me, you know. It gave me, and it took me, you know. It's not that I studied it, you know. I'm not studious. I'm a dropout. So. Yeah.
And I mean, it's right, because so much of what you're doing is just listening and learning,
Yeah.
And then, and in your case, sort of
Yeah.
painting that and bringing those stories
Yeah.
to life and putting them out into the world for other people to kind of see and digest and work with.
Well, I also think that for me, it's easier in some ways because I come from Germany, our tiny country started 2 world wars, tried to exterminate people for their beliefs, and it's really ugly. And the one thing that we do in Germany that's a given, I worked in the state theater, I worked in all kinds of different entities in that way, and we give 20% of our art funding to processing the burden of our past. So the job of art is to process. And I learned that that's kind of like in my DNA because I learned that that's what you do, and here I think what we try so hard and what we really shouldn't, what we've got to let go of is trying to vanilla things and make things pretty, one thing that recently I did a little bit of studying and reading up on presidents because I felt like, how did we get to this idiot in office? I'm sorry, I'm just going to call him that. This idiot. He does not deserve another name. He deserves worser names, actually. But I'm realizing that there's so much pretty upping, we can call it whitewashing, but it's kind of like vanilla-ing. It's making like, if you read in a presidential library, something like, George Washington abdicated from stopped being president. Like he didn't go for another election so that he could take care of his slaves.
Right.
I think that we need to revisit this history and then we'll understand that, there is a reason we got here and there is a reason why we have to change. That's not the story. That's the way we like the story to be. Now, coming from Germany, you're not in charge of the narrative. We lost 2 wars, so there's no way we could say, oh yeah, we didn't mean it, or, no, this is what we did, and we have to take responsibility. And the best way we take responsibility is for not letting it happen again.
Absolutely. I know from my own experience in high school, rarely did we make it past World War II in our studies. Like it was the end of the year, and we just didn't make it to the civil rights era.
That's why,
and I think that was common.
Yeah. We watched, when I was a teenager, we watched with horror the Nuremberg procedures, and I don't think any teenager here has gone through that experience of like feeling this incredible deep shame, and that's a reward. That's a gift that was given to us, that we cannot just be full of pride and so I feel also when confronted, I am better equipped to take that time and understand rather than just go like, nah, not me. I'm not involved. No. I was too young. I didn't know. No, you have to take responsibility of the narrative. You have to take responsibility of the burden that this history produces. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Right, and be humbled by that, right? That's a big part of it is
that's
humility and and connection.
Yeah, but it's not just feel rewarded by the truth. The truth will reward you, even if it's a bad truth, even if it's ugly. If the truth is what sets us free.
So before we wrap up the program, I just wanted to share a few photographs from your restaurant and kind of bring it back to Chez Oskar and encourage people to order.
It's hard to look at these pictures, I'll be honest. We really want to reopen and we want our staff back. It's really hard right now to talk about that, I'll be honest. Yeah. We're doing to-go and delivery, but we're getting screwed by delivery apps, and then and it's also getting in touch with reality, because I know how I used to be when I just was a painter. You could really feel sorry for yourself, but now you can't, because you get humbled by the stories of so many other people that you're working with, that you feel quite privileged to be able to express yourself. And well, I love doing decor, so I did everything I want, and I went crazy on decor over there. And often restaurants I found were pretty beige, and the last thing I wanted was if people created memories and met maybe for the first time, or went on their romantic dates to our place and we were that backdrop, that I didn't want them to have a beige background. you know, that's where this aqua color comes in. It's pretty opinionated and strong, and it makes everyone look good.
And this painting that we see on the ceiling was something that you created, right? This is your own work here.
Yes, it's reflecting from like a 15th, 16th century, you know, illustrator, painter, who they were competing with the words on these books, and, you know, the prettier, the better, the more beautiful. And I find that they have incredible humor, and I wanted to bring like nature inside from the outside, and something that was also whimsical. And the ceiling is actually really low in this bar, and it's not even, I mean, I can touch the ceiling if I stand on my toes, and I'm 5'8". So but I wanted it to feel like there was a greater depth of field. So I thought, if you paint these giant, oversized, delicious things on the ceiling, it'll feel higher, and it actually does, in my opinion.
I can understand kind of the grief and anguish you must be feeling as you think about the restaurant, in part because your restaurant is a center of the community. It brings people together, you know, it's a space and a place.
Every community has many centers. I don't want to put myself on a high horse there, but, you know, it's a restaurant is happiest when it's full. That's all I can say. You have that chatter, that feeling, that energy, you know, and also there's just so much in motion. It's all about flow, and you feel the flow of life too, you know. And someone stops by, tells you about the news, or tells you what they've experienced, and you're just being witness to each other's lives. And right now that's not taking place, and that's really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, just about every restaurant, every local mom and pop has so much meaning to different people in different communities. And so I just want you to know that our hearts are with you, that we're pulling for you and the other kind of restaurants across the city. We want to see you make it through this, because it's restaurants like Chez Oskar that make New York such a special place. And so I want to, if we can pull down the slides, Doug, I just want to thank you, Charlotta, for taking the time during this stressful kind of period, and coming on the program. We really appreciate it.
But yeah, I think what we have to also do is maintain our humor and reflect, and just realize we are bearing witness to something incredible, you know. And I think a lot of things, you know, things will be really bad for a while, but things will also get better. And we have to participate in that, you know. That's our job, you know, and we can't stand still.
100%. I think that's that's maybe the best way to close, the best closing words for the end of the program. Thank you, Charlotta, so much, and stay safe and healthy, and keep doing what you're doing. We're so grateful for the impact that you're having on other people with your life. Thank you.
Yeah, it's better than punching in the wall, so it's easier to paint. All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So just to close out the program, we're now past 12 o'clock. And I just want to encourage those of you who haven't joined us before to consider joining us this afternoon to see Gina Gao, who is one of our staff members. She grew up in Wuhan, and she's going to be sharing her childhood memories of growing up in Wuhan, of street life there, of the food, of the people, what she misses about living there. And then tomorrow we're going to do some bird watching, get out into nature with Gabriel Willow. And then on Tuesday, we'll be going to Rocking the Boat. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And we hope that everyone stays safe and healthy. And we are so grateful for you joining us today, because this is what makes it possible for us as a tour business to continue to operate, is by doing these virtual programs. Thank you so much, and have a great afternoon.